Have you ever watched someone make one mistake that completely destroyed their own future? That's exactly what happened the day I walked into that courtroom. The judge's gavel cracked through the room, silencing every whisper. "Take that medal off immediately," Judge Miller snapped, staring at me with open disrespect. "This courtroom isn't the place for military displays." Across the room, my late brother's wife, Brenda, leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile. She looked completely confident, convinced she was about to walk away with everything: my brother's estate, our family home, and my reputation. The entire courtroom waited for my reaction. They expected me to argue, beg, or quietly remove the Navy Cross from my chest. Instead, I stood straight, carefully unpinned the medal, placed it on the table, and stayed silent. Not a single word. Then, my attorney connected a secure drive to the courtroom display. As the first files appeared on the screen, Judge Miller's confidence disappeared in seconds. The color drained from his face. At that moment, he had no idea that forcing me to remove that medal would become the biggest mistake of his entire career. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I'm 34 years old, and I spent 12 years serving as an officer in the United States Navy. During my service, I believed I'd experienced the worst people could do to each other. I was wrong. The hardest battle of my life didn't happen overseas. It started the day I came home to bury my older brother. David wasn't just my brother. He was my closest friend. But before the grief had even settled, his widow, Brenda, had already started treating his death like a business opportunity. She knew exactly how to fool people. In public, she played the heartbroken wife, wiping away tears for anyone watching. Behind closed doors, she was quietly draining my brother's accounts. Money never mattered to me. The only things I wanted to protect were our family's historic home and the military trust David had created to secure his children's future. Brenda saw things differently. To her, I wasn't family. I was the only obstacle standing between her and a fortune. Just 3 weeks after David's funeral, someone knocked on my front door and handed me legal papers. Brenda was... Some people think they've won before the real fight even begins. Brenda was one of those people. She walked into that courtroom smiling, completely unaware that everything she had built on lies was only minutes away from falling apart. The morning of the trial was dark and stormy. Rain hammered against the courthouse windows as I stepped inside wearing my official U.S. Navy dress uniform, along with every medal I had earned through 12 years of service. The atmosphere was tense. Brenda was already seated with 2 expensive attorneys beside her. Dressed in black, she looked every bit like the grieving widow she wanted everyone to believe she was. It was a flawless performance, but I knew exactly who she really was. Then Judge Arthur Miller entered. The moment I saw him, I knew this wasn't going to be a fair hearing. He had a reputation for running his courtroom with an iron fist, and it didn't take long to see where his sympathy was. He greeted Brenda's legal team with polite smiles, but every glance in my direction carried nothing but cold judgment. As the hearing began, Brenda's lead attorney stood up. Instead of discussing the facts or the law, he focused entirely on me. He pointed straight at my uniform. "Your Honor," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "the defense is trying to manipulate this courtroom. Wearing a military uniform and displaying medals in a civil property case is nothing more than an attempt to gain sympathy and influence the court." A wave of whispers spread across the room. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Brenda lean back with a satisfied smile. She believed everything was going exactly as planned. Then Judge Miller slammed his gavel. "Remove that medal immediately," he ordered, his voice cutting through the courtroom. "This is a court of law, not a stage for military displays. Take it off now, Miss Brooks, or I'll hold you in contempt." The room went silent. Outside, the rain continued beating against the windows. Everyone watched me. Brenda expected me to lose my temper. The judge expected me to argue. Some probably. In a single moment, Judge Miller lost every bit of confidence he had carried into that courtroom. The smug expression that had stayed on his face all morning disappeared. Panic replaced it. He looked up from the bench, scanning the room with frightened eyes. Only then did he notice the two men sitting quietly in the back. They hadn't come to watch the trial. They were investigators from the State Commission on Judicial Conduct, accompanied by federal prosecutors. My attorney had contacted them before the hearing even began, making sure they would witness everything firsthand. Breaking the heavy silence, my lawyer spoke calmly. "Your Honor, all supporting evidence has already been delivered to the Department of Justice. The defense requests an immediate suspension of these proceedings and asks that all authority over the estate be transferred to my client without delay." Brenda looked genuinely terrified. She turned toward her expensive legal team, her voice shaking. "Do something! Fix this!" But there was nothing left to fix. Her attorneys quietly gathered their files, closed their briefcases, and stepped away from her table. They knew the case was over, and they wanted no part of what was coming next. The entire plan she had spent months building collapsed in less than a minute. The courtroom was so quiet that no one dared to move. Judge Miller slowly lowered his gavel, but this time he had nothing to say. Minutes later, the investigators walked forward and served official subpoenas right there in the courtroom. The judge was escorted out through a private exit, ending his career on the spot as he faced serious federal investigations involving bribery and wire fraud. Brenda remained frozen in her chair. Without the corrupt influence she had depended on, her case fell apart immediately. A replacement judge took over the hearing. After reviewing the evidence, the court dismissed Brenda's lawsuit with prejudice, permanently preventing her from making another claim against my brother's estate. The court also ordered an immediate freeze on her financial accounts, while investigators examined the fraudulent transfers, theft of estate assets, and allegations of elder financial abuse.